You stumbled into a podcast. It's Binge-Watchers podcast with Johnny Spoiler, and joined by, as always, the Savage Scream Queen, Jordan Savage herself. However, tonight, right before we started, she's like, I need to gather my thoughts. And I'm like, oh, I got to quote this. In quotations, let me take a minute to gather my thoughts. For tonight's Aquatic triple feature. Why'd you have to gather your thoughts?
Triple feature, baby.
Too much movie.
You know, it's a lot of movie in one week.
Lot of movies.
Yeah,
and it's all underwater. That's the other thing too. Is like, oh man, we're never getting ahead of this. We're underwater.
Yeah, or, I'm literally drowning in all of my thoughts. So,
welcome back, Binge Watchers fans. It's your boy Johnny Spoiler. I'm here with my crew to announce our plans for this summer. That's right. It's the 5th annual horror movie festival, Summer Slash, or Summer/5. Let me tell you, we got some spine-chilling, bone-crunching, blood-curdling horror movies in store for you guys. From rediscovered classics like Girls' Night Out and Bloody Moon to a sunken double feature lineup with The Deep House and Underwater. We're going to review, discover, and recommend the best of the best in horror. And of course, we'll be spoiling the crap out of them too. But hey, that's what makes it fun, right? So get ready to scream, jump, and even puke a little. The Summer/5 is coming in hot. And remember, folks, it's only a podcast. Just keep telling yourself that. It's only a podcast. It's only a podcast. Hey, it's only a podcast. I wish I had a pink drink tonight, but I got something else in my little, what do they call these little, I don't know, like wine koozies or something? Like where they got like the little
wine tumbler or something.
Yeah, the tumbler. They keep your beverage cool for 12, 13 hours.
I got the good old Mountain Dew Baja Blast.
She's rocking the Baja Blast for tonight's underwater lineup. All right. First, some horror movie headlines. It's Summer/5. If they haven't figured that out by now, I mean, we've played the intro now 3 times. You know what I'm amazed by? Is sometimes, Jordan, like, I get nervous during Summer Slash, and sometimes we change the lineup. We actually have stuck to the movies mentioned in the preview. That's pretty impressive.
The only thing we didn't stick to is that this week's a triple feat instead of a double feature. So you got a little extra on top.
Oh, yeah, we put a little cherry on that. Like, you're right, because you're right. In the preview, we say double, but we actually have an aquatic horror movie triple feature. But to back up, some horror movie headlines real quick. Deadline is reporting that Art the Clown from the Terrifier movies will be back in Terrifier 3, which I think it's... Oh, I should have written down the network. I forgot the network that it's going to, but anyway. It's going to be on one of the new streamers, and I don't know anything about these evil clown movies except for the guy. I guess he's called Art the Clown. He's terrifying. Hence the title, The Terrifier. I had to look it up. Like... they're extremely gory movies. Like, I don't know if they're actually scary. I mean, if you got fear of clowns, then it might line up for you. But I'm not sure. There's this weird movie called Suitable Flesh coming out, which is kind of based on, like, an H.P. Lovecraft story. But it has, like, horror movie realty, or royalty, not realty. They're not realty. It's not like a haunted house company. Royalty. Barbara Crampton, who's, like, an 80s and 90s horror star. Might have seen her in, like, Puppet Master, Chopping Mall, From Beyond. I don't like From Beyond, but she's in that. Recently, she was Jacob's wife. She was the wife that gets turned into I think she becomes a vampire in that movie. Anyway, she's in, like, 30 horror movie titles. Brian Yuzna is producing it. He goes back to, like, Bride of Reanimator, Beyond Reanimator. He did Necronomicon. One of my favorites is Revenge of the Living Dead. No, Return of the Living Dead 3 from the Return of the Living Dead series, which is like a romance. We did that. We actually covered that a couple years ago in our Bad Romance month. He did The Dentist, which is, you know, there's a killer series of movies, The Dentist. But anyway, he's also like a heavy hitter.
What, actual feel for no, but just an actual fear for me. I'm like, that sounds
the fear of the dental work. Oh yeah, and original Reanimator writer too, Dennis Paoli. I'll probably pronounce his name wrong. I think it's an Italian. I don't know. Pally? Dennis Pally? That sounds right. Anyway, and then I also heard they're gonna adapt the Scream 6 team, who did Ready or Not, who did the latest Scream, are gonna do like a unannounced like Universal monster movie. So we don't know which. We don't know if it's the Wolfman, the Invisible Man. We don't know if it's Dracula. We don't know what Universal monster movie it is, but supposedly Michelle Berea, who was one of the final girls from, I think she plays Sam, who's like the older of the two new sisters, who's in like the newer Screams, I think. But you know, hey, if you want some trivia, I don't like the new Screams, so you know, whatever. Oh, I forgot to mention, because of tonight's Aquatic triple feature, before we tell you what the movies are and get into the savage stats of all three movies, I wanted to identify these phobias. Like there's aquaphobia, thalassophobia, galliphobia. Here's a real funny one. Megalohydrothalassophobia, which is kind of my favorite. But I'm going to tell people what these are because they kind of tie into tonight's movie. So, aquaphobia. People with aquaphobia have a fear of water. Aqua from Latin, phobia, phobia is from fear or whatever, right? So, extreme fear or anxiety thinking about or seeing water, swimming pools or lakes. I guess just seeing it. Thalassophobia is an intense fear of deeper water, oceans or lakes. So they want to avoid deep water. Or that otherwise they'll have overwhelming anxiety. Galliophobia, this is an easier one. The fear of sharks. Gallios, I guess, means shark. Phobia, we've already talked about, that's fear. Elevated heart rates or shortness of breath or shaking, sweating, nausea, or dizziness associated with Hollywood movies and media that reinforce the fear of sharks. Now, this is my favorite one, and it ties into tonight's movie like Underwater and maybe Leviathan. Deep House ties into more thalassophobia, maybe, right? Deep water, because you don't really, yeah. But megalohydrothalassophobia, the fear of large underwater creatures or objects within the deep water. Not the deep water itself. Like how they can identify the three separate fears when they all kind of like are so similar.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Jordan said that she has dentophobia. I don't even know if that's the real term for being afraid of
Don't quote him on that.
Don't quote me. What's the fancy word for teeth or dentist? Somebody look that up. Do you have a mix of any of these water-related fears or traumas?
I would for sure be megalohydrothalassophobia.
So it's not the water, but what's in the deep water.
Yeah, the fear of large underwater creatures or objects. I have a lot of dreams where I'll be like on a paddleboard or like a small boat. And in my dream, like I'll see tons of like creatures underneath me. It's like there's so many, it's like a swarm of all sorts of different fish and sharks and like whales and stuff. And I'm like really scared of getting into the water. But yeah, it's almost like a swarm or something. Which one would you fall into?
Well, what I thought those creatures were in the water. I mean, do we really want to dissect the psychology of what those creatures are in Jordan's dreams? Oh, I'll just keep that to my imagination.
Yeah. Just
she's like, good idea. Let's see. No, I'm not really afraid of deep water. I just jump in and hope that I survive. Like, yeah, I get over that fear quickly. The only fear in life that like overtakes me is well, actually, there's fear of failure. But that's like an economical thing. That's like an economical pressure of, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But the one that gets me actually is like I have a fear of heights. I get dizzy, like I have like a vertigo situation, like whatever that is. If I'm higher than like 6 feet, I go to 9 feet, and it's really funny because I used to jump off of like the tops of buildings into like dirt. You know what I mean? Like I used to just jump down hills and hope that I smacked through trees and the hillside to not get torn apart. So it's a complete difference, a change in like the last 15, 20 years or something where, I don't like to be off the ground anymore. And it's an actual fear. I know that because like it doesn't make any rational sense that if I go up 15 floors in a building and I go, oh, I'm actually 15 floors above the ground, and then not want to be up there. You know what I mean? It's
Oh
not.
my
It's not like.
goodness.
That's why I know it's a real fear, because it's like not. There's no rational reason.
Yeah, not
Well, I
logical
can't
at
have a
all.
room on the 15th floor. Do you know what I mean? It's just like there's
Yeah.
no logical reason. The Deep House. What is it about? Let's see. We have 3 movies tonight, guys. We got The Deep House, Underwater, and Leviathan. In place of another movie we told you we were going to do last week, a shark movie. Well, guess what? The people who were going to provide us with the screener didn't come through, so we had to, I got Jordan texting me in the middle of the night, hey, it's broken. I'm like, all right, we'll go to my favorite underwater horror movie, Leviathan. So we're going to do The Deep House, Underwater, and Leviathan.
He had them locked and loaded for us.
Yeah. Deep House. What is it about? Some YouTubers explore a haunted house underwater. What's underwater about? After a mining accident on the seafloor, survivors have to crawl across to the safer mining location, and they get attacked by some strange creatures in the deep who may have caused the accident. It's unclear. Seems like the creatures are fucking with the whole mining operation. Last movie. As I said, it's my favorite underwater horror movie, and I think it's the gold standard, Leviathan. A mining crew encounters a mutant virus that starts mutating the crew under the sea. See? Like, these are very similar. However, Leviathan was made first. Also, I was watching this home video commercial. There was a SeaWorld vacation promo for Leviathan. If you turned it in September of 1989, folks, you got 3 days, 2 nights at SeaWorld and the Cayman Islands. I thought that was a pretty good promo.
Interesting.
I almost, if I could have gotten the rights to the commercial, or if nobody complained, I was thinking about like, oh, I should just play this commercial on the podcast because it's like ridiculous. It was really funny though. I'm watching a behind the scenes thing, and then it cut to. So they must have put it on the videotape. Like when people bought the videotapes, it's like, here's the behind the scenes. Here's the director talking. Here's Ernie Hudson talking about the special effects. Here's Stan Winston talking about the special effects. Cut to, folks, if you want to stay at SeaWorld for 2 nights and they write to us now. Whoa.
I remember movies doing that. Like it would have some sort of like sweepstakes, or like, you know, you could win like a trip for your family to go to Disney. But that's so funny that they did that for like a movie that's like this, where there's a creature that's mutating like off of the humans that it's like eviscerating down deep in the ocean.
You just watch 90 minutes of people getting ripped apart, but it's like, hey, it's like, if you want to take your family to SeaWorld and hang out in the deep, dark water with your family, no worries. Like, sign up now.
It's like dark tourism, but before dark tourism, I guess,
So, yeah, this is a real challenge to give Jordan 3 movies to look up some facts. I said, hey, maybe just tell us 1 or 2 things about each movie. And, yeah, and we had to plug in Leviathan, so really keep her on her toes tonight.
Yes. So I'll try to keep this brief, but yeah, it's why I needed to gather my thoughts. It was like, there's a lot going on here. I will start with The Deep House. I think that there was a lot of really interesting facts about how it was filmed. One of them being that the house was actually built on a large grid and progressively plunged into 9-meter deep water tank that was about 28 meters wide, and they couldn't leave the whole house underneath the water for multiple days because it would obviously ruin the decor. And so they have to like submerge or immerse only parts of the house while they were shooting. So they would do like floor by floor. And it was risky having the actors and crews go 6 meters deep. It was very uncommon and difficult to actually ensure this set. You know, you have people who are diving and houses, and they're going in houses underwater. It seems like that would definitely be a task.
Some undead, devil-worshipping murderers acting like they're not actually drowning while they're acting underwater. Like,
right?
The people playing the killers.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I didn't really think about that until now because those characters didn't have.
Yeah, like, they're holding their breath for like 45 seconds at a time in multiple shots or whatever.
Oh my God. That just like gives me anxiety to think about.
Well, it's interesting that you say they want to keep the house looking fresh. I was like, oh yeah, because that's the only mark of like a true haunted house movie is like that things aren't covered in cobwebs and dusty. Like if it's actually well maintained, it's actually more scary because you're like, why is this?
Right.
Wait a minute. Like nobody's supposed to live here. Like why is, but there's some straight up haunted house movie stuff going on as soon as they swim into the house because the way things were like stacked, like the chairs on the table, even though it's
Yeah.
underwater, like it's not going to be a naturally occurring thing in regular. If there was a submerged house, things are not going to be stacked symmetrically like haunted stuff, with Ghostbuster
Right.
style.
The chairs on the table and
Yeah.
certain things, yeah. And I did kind of,
Or the
that's like
drone bugging out
conclusion
and his green light changing to a red light
to
to show
red,
you that,
yeah.
oh no, they got the little, they got the drone. Like,
Giving me some like Space Odyssey vibes with like Hal coming back. Like
oh,
it was
man.
definitely some spooky stuff. But I thought the same thing. I was drawing the same conclusion of like, okay, since it's a supernatural house, it's like how it was preserved so well. Moving on to underwater, I thought there was some really interesting things in terms of like the nods that they were doing towards other movies, works of art, or even books. Obviously, we have the one with Alien. They kind of reference it a lot throughout the movie, but one of the parts was that there is a similar opening scene where there's no dialogue in the first couple of minutes. So that was like one of the first nods. There's also a nod to, actually, there's tons to Lewis Carroll's Alice Adventures in Wonderland, or Alice in Wonderland, that I didn't really recall, and so it makes me want to go back and watch it. They also do a George Harrison song, refer to the song Any Road, which is actually a paraphrase from Lewis Carroll's book, and then they do nods to Lovecraft as well. So lots of like little Easter eggs in terms of things that you could take a look at from other works of art.
Well, there's these creatures in Lovecraft mythology that H.P. Lovecraft wrote into his stories, but then like a bunch of people expanded in video games, comic books, other movies. There's a creature called Shoggoth, and I don't know if these creatures in this movie are Shoggoth or if they're related to Clotho or Cthulhu, whatever that dude's name is, who's like,
I think there's
an octopus god.
They nod to both.
Yeah.
Cthulhu or whatever. I think they reference that in the beginning. I think maybe when
there's a weird painting. There's like a weird painting in one of the stations or something.
And then Shoggoth, that is like the smaller creatures. They are referring to Lovecraft with the smaller creatures.
And you were saying the Alice stuff, like, well, the dude, TJ Miller, the comedian, plays a guy named Paul. And little Paul is a white rabbit, right?
Yes.
Guiding him through the maze or whatever, and a good luck charm or whatever, and then he passes it along or whatever.
He's supposed to have like a Cheshire cat tattoo as well.
On his chest. The only thing I wrote down about the cat, I wrote down, okay, it's got a cast. It's got Kristen Stewart, TJ Miller, and Vincent Cassel, who's like a really good French actor. He's the one that plays the ill-fated captain.
Oh my god, I love him from Black Swan.
And then you got some stuff about Leviathan. Well, I said some stuff about Leviathan already, but
one of the things, though, before I'll let you take the reins with Leviathan, is that they shot the full movie with, like, it was supposed to be a real bunny rabbit that Paul was carrying around. So they gave him the stuffed animal just to like mark in the bunny later. But then they never decided to keep the doll because it kind of like questioned like almost like his sanity a little bit. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. But they actually, when they show Smith that's like retreating into the pod, of course Paul passes on the bunny when he dies to Smith. Smith is in the pod, and you actually see a real rabbit in the pod before they close the door. So I thought that was
what the hell?
Cool. Yeah.
Mistake.
Yeah.
Oh man. So we talked about the SeaWorld promos for Leviathan, but the cast is stacked. Okay, Peter Weller is the captain. Amanda Pays, classically trained British actress, I guess. I don't know, she's got an accent. Richard Crenna, we all know, played the commander, and Rambo's in here as the doctor. Ernie Hudson, like I already mentioned, he plays one of the cohorts. Daniel Stern, playing the ill-fated hillbilly cowboy, decides to drink out of a flask from a Russian submerged ship. Come on, guy. Come on, guy. What are you doing? Meg Foster, looking creepy as hell. She played Evil Lynn in the He-Man movie, but she's in a lot of creepy stuff. We're actually going to watch in October. We have a couple horror movies with her in it, but she's a really intense actress. You might have seen her in there's a witch movie made by Rob Zombie, like maybe 9 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago. I don't know. She's in that, but she goes back. She may have started in the 70s, but she's definitely pretty prevalent in like the 80s and early 90s. but she has like a dangerous attraction. Like you look at her, she's like very intense looking, but you're drawn to it like a moth to the flame. That's kind of like her deal. She plays the executive who's like, it's not that bad. We'll come get you in a couple days. We're gonna try to collect this mutant and sell it.
Yeah, I don't know.
She has very intense eyes. Yeah,
very intense eyes. Like I honestly was like, is she a creature? Like I don't know.
Now,
yeah.
Everybody, I think he's the maitre d' in Pretty Woman, but Hector Elizondo is kind of like the voice of reason for half the movie, and then like definitely like there's Alien, and then there's this movie, and there's like a doctor in Alien who's like an android in there, but there's a doctor in this one, and they're kind of like in disbelief, and then like somebody gets their hands bitten off. I think it's the doctor in the first Alien, but then like the doctor gets taken out in here by the other guy who has kind of a weird hand thing. So it's kind of like they're very similar. And this is considered like the aliens underwater, right? Mm-hmm. It draws most of its references from Alien. However, before the show tonight, Jordan and I were cracking up because in 1989, there were 4 underwater horror movies, and then one that had like a deep mystery that did better than the rest, and maybe came out in 89 or 90, whatever, like The Abyss by James Cameron, which is about aliens. Aliens underwater, literally. But besides that one, the rest are all about like lobster monsters or lobstrosities or crustaceans that are out of control. There's Deep Star 6, which has the most in relationship to Leviathan and underwater. And then there's another one called The Rift, which is also called Endless Descent. There's Lords of the Deep, which I think is about finding a lost colony of Atlantis. I'm not sure. I've never seen that one, so I don't know if it's about monsters or people underwater. And there's another one, but I can't think of what. The Deep Below or something. I don't know. Whatever. The whole point is, what a phenomenon 89 must have been with a bunch of underwater horror movies coming out at the same time.
So wild. What a
and the director, George Cosmodius, he directed a cult cop movie with Stallone called Cobra. Cobra's really cool. Probably his best movie. And then he craps out. He was supposed to shoot Tombstone, I think, and then like he gets kicked off the movie. And then like the word on the street with that is that like Kurt Russell and the other actors actually finished directing Tombstone, right? Which is like the greatest Western ever filmed, or you know what I mean? Or like it's like right up there, right? Top Western. Besides maybe Dances with Wolves. Yeah. I digress. We're not talking about Westerns. It's not freaking summer shoot 'em up. It's summer slash. That was a weak one, but I couldn't think of anything else. What else is going on? Oh, criticisms. This is like my 15th or 16th time seeing Leviathan. I never discovered this home video commercial edition with the SeaWorld commercial, which I thought was really funny. Why sharks? Okay, so towards the end of the movie, I guess we're in favorite bits now.
And we better, because I'm glad you're bringing up the sharks.
I wrote why sharks because right before you see the final, because the mutant transforms like 4 or 5 times, which I love. It's kind of like the thing, like you want to see this thing progress. It absorbs the body parts from the dead crewmen. They talk inside of its body to freak out the other people.
Yes.
So, but why sharks? So there's 3 sharks that show up towards like in the last 7 minutes of the movie. There's 3 survivors floating to the surface. The girl with the accent, Peter Wells, naturally character, and Ernie Hudson. And you think Ernie Hudson's going to make it through the whole movie, and then a piranha comes out of the water. Because the final form, that's what I wrote down too, is like the final form of the mutant sucks as well. Like his previous octopusy / mutant multiple body part thing was way cooler. Right before the explosion of the base, then this thing that showed up at the end, it's a giant piranha with arms and legs, and it like is ripping Ernie Hudson's character to pieces. And then you feel bad, like the movie's only 90 minutes long. The guy survives for 87 minutes and then dies. It's you know what I mean. Anyway, those are criticisms, but I digress. What's my favorite part of that movie? When the crew is first discovering the flask and but right before all the shit hits the fan, it's like everybody's getting along, so like it's just similar to Alien. Like it's a long haul, we're all gonna have a meal, things are all right. It's actually like if a horror movie does a really good job, they do this part of the movie right, where everybody's kind of like having a great time, and then like we'll show you how good a time they can have, and then we'll make it so much worse. So that's my favorite thing. I'm like working backwards now. I said we're gonna do Deep House, Underwater, Leviathan, but I'm like working in like reverse order now.
Y Sharks just got you hooked.
Yeah, the Y Sharks.
Right in.
We'll back it up so Jordan can walk us through favorite bits for the other two. Well, I mean, I don't want to be too rigid. Like, do you want to say your favorite bits for Leviathan, or do you want to go through like the official order?
No, I can talk about Leviathan. I try to keep my bits closer to like the kills that were in the movie, and so I said that my favorite one was De Jesus, because he's like in the cafeteria sort of area, and
you mean the most emotional death of the whole movie?
Yes.
Like,
well, and it's like a massive sort of leech thing, and it just like comes out of nowhere in the cafeteria, and it's just like leeching onto his chest, and it is so emotional. He's just begging for his buddy.
Yeah, and then when he's absorbed into the creature, he retains some of his humanity and it freaks everybody out. Yeah.
He comes on back, and you like see the creature, and there's just the face of De Jesus, and he's just like, kill me. So at least they kind of had that one revisit in the movie. But I did also like the kill of, or I guess it would have been like an injury of the creature. I couldn't tell if there was multiple creatures or if there was just one.
Well, that's what it's unclear, right? It's really just one organism with multiple pieces.
Right. You're right.
That are trying to put themselves back together.
And one of the pieces I liked, because like Beck is like trying to hop into the suit, and he's like trying to launch himself into the water, and he's like getting stuck. And one of the pieces like gets its like fish bass head stuck in between the platform, and it just squishes it, and it just like
my favorite bit of this entire series of Summer Slash is Jordan trying to explain the name of the creature or the death to the audience has been the best thing of all time.
Squish and stuff.
Fish head net thing. Like, before it was like you're like the torso stabbed breasts lady hanging or whatever.
How else for you to describe that? Okay. Yeah. So that was my favorite bit with Leviathan.
Man, what about Deep House?
Deep House, man, this one spooked me.
It's creepy because it's realistic.
It is creepy, very realistic. Like you have just creepy stuff. Like the house itself is really scary. The concept is scary, right? And it's starting to get more paranormal as they get deeper. And obviously they
are you suggesting it gets creepier as they go deeper into the Deep House?
There you go.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's kind of like you could tell there's something weird going on. They kind of like cookie trail crumb it for you. And then you realize that there's like something horrible going on in the house where these kids are going missing. And they finally get down into the cellar, and you see the like two bodies in the cellar hanging by these chains with these masks on them.
First of all, the bodies are ceremoniously trapped behind Jesus, and they had to remove Jesus, who was keeping everything in check. You know what I mean? Like, we had a giant religious relic,
right?
Kind of like entombing these evil people. You know what I mean? Like,
why would you think that's a good idea?
Let's take away the talisman.
Yes,
the good magic.
Let's remove the massive Jesus.
Yes. Let's remove the good magic and go right into the evil magic, the black magic contained within. And let's mess with their hooks. Let's swim around until they come off their hooks and get us.
The boyfriend was not a bright one in this movie.
Well,
he's doing it for the lights.
Let me ask you this, because you do a lot of outdoors activities or hiking. I didn't even know Colorado had dunes. Jordan was sharing on her Facebook that there were like dunes. I was like, there's a national park with dunes in Colorado. I didn't know that.
Yes.
My point is this. Are you going to let the guy who's like, I can show you a secret part of the lake? You know what I mean? Like, what's his name? Pierre or something? Like, on your travels, your adventures, Jordan, if a guy was like, hey, you want to come to the secret part of this hill where, there's a house underwater? You know what I mean? Like, hey, sign me up.
Horsetooth here in Fort Collins, Colorado, actually is a reservoir on top of what was once a town. And so they do say that, like, when the water is clear and you're under the water, like pretty much scuba diving like they are, you can see the church steeple. So this was like super spooky. But no, I'm typically the adventurous one, and I'm too bossy to let people make decisions on anything like that. So, like, I'd be the one who's like, let's go look at this creepy thing, but I'm not going to do anything that's going to get me got, you know. So Tina, she was my favorite bit. She obviously, I want to spoil it, she doesn't make it out.
Ooh, she's like, so this is a really disturbing part of the movie, folks. Like, she can hold her breath for about 3 minutes. She gets past the dead body. She gets past her possessed boyfriend. She's climbing out through underwater tree root system or something that has a crevice. And she literally drowns maybe, like, I don't know, less than a meter from the surface of the lake or whatever. Like, she can see the sunlight. You know? She's within sight of a rescue or respite or something. And she runs out of oxygen. And so it's like, even underwater, folks, the monsters get all of them. Like, except for there's 2 people in escape pods, but we don't know if they're going to make it to the surface because the movie doesn't tell us. So,
this is true.
You know, they try to get rid of the monsters, but both those movies kind of like have no survivors. Leviathan gives you kind of a happy ending because they even punch out the executive, but
they do.
It's kind of left in a disturbing tone in the Deep House, which is drowning after exploring underwater for too long. You could run it. That could happen to you, regardless of the supernatural stuff. Like, that element is truly horrifying.
So close, and like, you don't really know how far you are away from the surface. And I was just hoping she was swimming her little heart out. But if you remember in the beginning of the movie, when she's holding her breath in the bathtub, it only makes it to like a minute and 28 seconds. And I think she was like lying to her boyfriend that she could hold her breath for longer to like encourage the trip. And then she runs out of air.
That's the other thing a good movie will do, is like foreshadow the fate of the character, right? They'll show you something, but like, hey, you're going to forget about this because we're going to confuse you with all these visuals, but then it's going to come back around.
Yes. What was your favorite of the Deep House?
When I saw it the first time, I liked how they were interacting with the drone like it was a character.
Mm-hmm.
And then they felt betrayed by his technology. And not being able to escape the house. Like, every time they opened the window, it was they couldn't get out. And like, they try to go up the chimney collapses on them, which, again, if you're exploring an underwater structure, something could collapse on you. So it's like,
totally
many things in this movie, but I love found footage, but I always wonder, like, well, who assembles everybody? That you have to, the suspend your disbelief part is like, it gets so scary that you go along with it, but then in the back of your mind, you're like, well, who assembled the footage? Who got the tapes? Who put the movie together? I think like Netflix has a show where the main guy was the guy whose job it was to put together these cursed tapes or something. You know what I mean? Like, he's the guy that got the box of like half burnt videotapes he has to put back together. He was the finder of the footage or whatever. I think it's called like Number 12. Is it called Number 12? It has a weird name. I think 12's in the title. And again, that's devil stuff too. It's like a cult in a building, blah, 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 whatever. But I just really I think it's because found footage for the most part is like grounded in reality on some level.
Mm-hmm.
So it scares you a little bit more. And then it makes you question what you're seeing. Like, if they introduce a supernatural element or like a zombie virus, like, have you ever seen Quarantine? Which is like a remake of...
Yeah, it's been so long, but I do remember. I like remember vividly the shaky camera and
so it's like a couple firefighters and a couple people in an apartment are like dealing with like a zombie type outbreak, like a viral outbreak thing, which is based on I think it's a Spanish movie called Rec, R-E-C. And there's like 4 of those movies. The second one's on a plane, and they actually did make the second movie in America too. Like, there's 2 like American like adaptations called Quarantine and Quarantine 2. Probably has a stupid subtitle like Quarantine 2 Turbulence or something. You know, it probably has like a stupid name after the number 2. But did I say my favorite bit?
Just
Yeah, so I guess I just like the tone and content because, first of all, it could have just been a found footage haunted house movie, but then like,
Right.
no, let's also sink the house and it's underwater as well.
Definitely took it to the next level with it being an underwater house. Yeah.
So on its merits, like it's a very good found footage. It does everything right by the found footage genre. It hits all the notes, right? It hits all the criteria for found footage. And then adds the element of the haunted house plus the underwater thing. So it kind of works on all these. It gets you. If you're a horror movie fan, it gets you on a few different levels. I like it more than I like Underwater. We could rate the movies now, but wait, do we have to do favorite bits for Underwater? It's hard to do.
I think we didn't do favorite bits for Underwater. Again, I kind of tried to keep mine to like a kill for Summer Slash, but I would say when Paul died, it was so sad.
Well, see,
I love him as an actor.
Yeah.
And
in that movie, he's my favorite character, and like I was really upset that he died when I watched it the first time. My only other favorite part is they have to go through the nest of the creatures to get to the station that's not demolished, where they think there's going to be like more oxygen tanks and maybe a vehicle to get out of there, and they have to go through the nest. So I thought that's probably my favorite part. But overall, it's kind of weak.
Yeah, Well, Paul's Skull I like too because I don't know why I always think like old scuba divers and like how they can die from the pressure of it like literally being sucked into their helmet, and his kind of almost does the reverse of that. Like the creature pulls him under and he like gets pulled out of his
breaks
suit,
his leg and then pulls him through the leg area of the suit or something. Yeah.
And it just was graphic, bloody.
Yeah, he gets like the worst death in the movie.
He does.
Possibly.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the captain dies off screen. We don't really see. And then the girl chooses to blow herself up. Spoiler alert, to kill the giant monster.
Right.
Whatever. Yeah. Yeah. We've done all three. We can rate them. We can Scream Now, Scream Later, or Scream Never. Usually we say Binge Now, Binge Later, Binge Never. However, because we're doing horror movie stuff, we're doing Scream Now, Scream Later, or Scream Never with The Deep House, Underwater, and Leviathan.
Okay. So Deep House for me was Scream Now. I just think like the whole underwater scary haunted house thing was something I've never seen before. So that was a Scream Now for me. For Underwater, it was a Scream Later for me. It was really great. I just thought it was a little like predictable. I was like, ocean madness with the captain. I could tell he's kind of losing his marbles. And then as soon as they kind of do the tidbit with Smith and then the other girl that they're like in love, I'm like, oh, she's totally like Nora's totally going to sacrifice herself so that these lovebirds can make it to the top. So, and I didn't like that I couldn't see like the monster, like at least one good like visual of the monster. I love that they kind of throughout the whole movie you're like searching because everything's moving and so you think something's going to sneak up on them, and it really gives that anxiety effect the whole time. But I just wanted to see like the big creature at least dead on just like once. It felt like I was a little blind, but maybe they did that on purpose. And then Leviathan was like it was a Scream Now for me. It was really good. I like it because it came before Underwater. The creature is just wild, and it was kind of made me laugh a little bit with the sharks and the punch at the end. But all good.
So now you got to pick one of the three.
Okay.
Overall,
I would say the Deep House was my favorite. Yeah. What about you? How would you rate them?
So I rate both Leviathan and the Deep House as a Scream Now. Like either one would be great for a Saturday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, any day of the week. At the top of your list, you can move it to the top of the pile. Underwater, I waited for like 6 months to see it when it came out. I just wanted the monsters so badly. I understand exactly like you understand that like they intentionally didn't give us the full details. Like they kept them out of the frame, edge of the frame, right? It was a choice, but still, like you, I would like to be more of an I want to be a zoologist or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, show me their habitat and everything that they're doing. So yeah, that's a Scream later. Nothing's a Scream never. So you can't lose with either of these movies. And overall, I mean, obviously, like when we had a public relations thing happen and we couldn't get the other movie to watch, I was like, don't worry. Like I was like, because I had been thinking about Leviathan the whole time I was watching Underwater, and I'm like, I wonder if I should tell Jordan about Leviathan, because I was like, I'm gonna have to, if we talk about Underwater, I'm gonna have to let the audience know that Leviathan exists, and then to what extent, because I'm pretty sure it came up with a previous staff pick, and we've probably mentioned it in like Binge-Watchers past a few times as like a favorite of ours. I was like, oh, if we do Underwater, I was like, this is an easy backup. Like, hey, just slide in Leviathan, and round out the trio or whatever.
Well, and I watched Underwater first, obviously, because we didn't have the other movies. So Leviathan came last, and I was like, damn, is he making me watch the same movie again? But like, obviously, like completely different creatures, completely different premise of the story. It's like sickness that's going around, and has now killed these people, and this creature can't be stopped. So I was like, dang.
We got some feedback and fan service this week, actually, because the comments on YouTube have been going nuts, but mostly about Linda Blair returning to The Exorcist. So people are jazzed. They're ready for this. The original star played the haunted little girl in The Exorcist, returning. Actually, she's in a funny movie called The Heretic, which is like it makes fun of The Exorcist, but she kind of plays her grown-up character in that with Leslie Nielsen. So people look that up. It's kind of funny. I think it's called Repossessed. Repossessed. The Heretic is The Exorcist 2. I don't know if she's in The Exorcist 2, but she's in Repossessed, which is like a comedy version of The Exorcist. Go, everybody, find it anyway. It's entertaining. However, Daniel, who's also a content creator from Hard R Comedy, I looked up his YouTube channel. He submitted a video because Jordan's been asking people to go, hey, like, what's your favorite horror movie? Get a gift card from us. Go rent some other horror movies. So this is Daniel's video of Hard R Comedy telling us, answer the question. Here we go.
Daniel with Hard R Comedy, man. Look, hey, reaching out to tell you that my favorite horror movie is The Exorcist. Cause I saw that shit when I was a kid. Scared the fuck out of me, man. Hard R Comedy. Check us out on YouTube, and look forward to reaching out and connecting later. See you.
Daniel, we'll definitely reach out to you. I actually subbed to Hard R Comedy on YouTube. They have a really funny disclaimer. They have like this really long disclaimer on their channel about like the kind of comedy you're going to get, and it goes on for like 10 minutes, which is kind of a funny thing in itself. I'll have to tell them that. But yeah, man, we're going to hook you up with a movie gift card. It's so funny. Like, okay, The Exorcist is a classic choice. I also to be fair, I think it's like a safe choice because like hundreds of people like this movie, or thousands of people. It's like, again, when you're like, oh, what's the best horror movie? It's in everybody's top 3. Maybe it's number 1. Wow. Eventually we're going to get to some religious horror movies, and we're going to slide in Exorcist 3 because it's basically like a serial killer movie, but with demonic possession. That's Exorcist number 3.
Yes. Daniel, thanks for sending us the video submission.
Yeah, pretty awesome. Jordan's been waiting for it, so there you go. We got one.
Keep it coming.
Yeah, keep those fan submissions coming. We'll play them on the air, and then you can win prizes. That's how it's done. What else is going on? Listen, I don't know if anybody had time to watch anything else. I watched the beginning of Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the new season. Kind of funny. Mac has a peanut allergy in the opener, and he is trying to fight through it, and it's really funny. Otherwise, I don't know. I mean, we had to watch 3 underwater horror movies, so I don't know what else you expect us to turn in. Do you have another staff pick, or just rolling with the aquatic triple feature?
No. Yeah, just rolling with the aquatic triple feature. Okay. That was a lot of movies.
Which is fair. I don't think we should turn in a staff pick if we watch all these movies.
Yeah, nothing to bring up. Obviously you always have something playing. But
listen, I had said we were following the lineup for Summer Slash, but I am on the fence about next week. So I actually am not going to drop a title for next week at the end of this episode. I'm going to leave it in suspense.
Dun, dun, dun.
How long did you have the dun 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 prepared?
For like a half a second. I wish I could be the Phantom with an organ sometimes. Just be like.
You may have just created a whole subgenre right now, because when has there ever been a female Phantom?
This is that could be
Trademark,
cool.
copyright. You heard it here first, folks.
You heard
it's
it
Jordan's
here.
movie now.
Yes.